Explosive, make your brand explosive, let it shine bright.
Hi, Nick Lewis here from Explosive, and in this video we're going to see how the bigger brands are less and not more reliable. We're going to have an interview with Nanda Menon, a private 5G guru, and we're going to show you how the smaller companies, this is the time to compete, because there has never been a better time to compete with the big brands. And if you've been following the news on private 5G, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Over the past few months, we've seen some extraordinary events unfold. We've seen most recently Nokia pull out from their private 5G endeavors, but they're not the only ones. We look back just only a few months ago to AWS pulling out, and even before that, Microsoft closing down all their private 5G, including Metaswitch. These are big brands making big promises and just walking away. You are having a problem with your private 5G supplier, or you're worried about the future of your current one, be a good time to reach out to guys at ASOCS. You can reach them on www.asocscloud.com, and there'll be links posted in all the posts and materials and descriptions that go with this video. So what's the lesson to be learned here? Size isn't security, and brand isn't commitment. For B2B clients, this is more than just headlines. This shows you just how much the bigger brands have the least focus on single products. At Explosive, we work with companies competing against these big brands, such as ASOCS, a private 5G supplier. One of the messages I keep hearing over and over again from companies like this can be summarized in one sentence. If they can walk away, they're not reliable. 2026 will be the year when these companies that are focused, laser focused on their clients' businesses, will stand up, step in, and take over. Hi there, I'm here with Nanda Menon, private 5G guru. Hi Nanda, thanks for agreeing to chat. Maybe we can start with you just giving like a little bit of a background, like who you are, what you're doing, and where you're from.
Hi Nick, thank you very much for taking the trouble to have me on your video podcast show to talk about 5G. I think we've both been in the business a long time. So yes, in terms of background, I was on the founding management team of Athernet, one of the teams that pioneered private 4G first and then 5G. We launched the first ever private LTE network going back to 2011 for Enel in Italy. And since then, we've been part of this market. So I've been in this market for nearly 2 decades. And we built that to be one of the top players globally before exiting to Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. And after that, I've been working within the ecosystem as a neutral person within the industry, trying to help the industry grow, an industry that we've grown together in, that we love and want to see succeed. And I think we're just moving into a world now where with automation, robotics, and all of these things, I wrote a paper in 2019 called The Singularity Generation about how AI, robotics, AR, VR, quantum computing, all were going to come together literally in the imminent future, and they're going to need a connectivity fabric. I couldn't have imagined that OpenAI would be as successful as it is, but when I wrote that in 2019, but everything that we thought about and we felt that private 5G would be needed in order to provide that fabric of pervasive connectivity so that we can really use AI and physical AI, particularly driving robotics and all of these things in a pervasive way, is really coming true. And private 5G is that connectivity layer, which is going to allow all of these things to take place and deliver.
So for today, let's talk about Noxit. I mean, it's a term that you coined, and it's ingenious, explaining the situation where all of a sudden people are waking up Christmas Eve almost and finding out no Nokia next year. And it's not the first time. We had this with AWS this year and Microsoft, including their Metaswitch. What's going on? I mean, why do the likes of Nokia and AWS and Microsoft suddenly just pull out of private 5G?
Private 5G was very much an emerging market. And I think what happened was that a lot of the big players, the AWSs, the Microsofts, Nokia, and even the Ericsson simply thought that as their mobile operator business was suffering, they were losing market share to Huawei and others. They began to look at enterprise as this thing that was going to come and save them. But the reality is, the enterprise is very attractive for companies like us, very attractive for scale-up companies, but it's not going to move a needle when you're running a business on the scale of global scale mobile operator vendor relationships, right? And I think they just underestimated the size of that market. It's a beautiful market for companies like us. It's probably a market that's growing at 25% per annum that you can measure in the hundreds of millions, or maybe even touching a billion. But it's not in the tens of billions, and it's not in the that order of magnitude. And I think that's where some of the larger players got sidetracked. Also, I think when they began to implement it, they began to realize, hey, there's a lot of intense understanding of the customer relationship and problems that matter. It's not like downloading a cat video, because a mobile operator network is basically geared to one thing: for you to be able to download cat videos from YouTube. Very simple application, but no complicated IP addressing. But if you're trying to put a set of sensors on the other side of a Caterpillar mining equipment 3 kilometers down on a mining rig, and trying to do IP addressing on the other side of that, so that you can address the right sensors, have mission critical control, etc. These become very, very fiddly, and it becomes more of an IP networking skill rather than a mobile net. The mobile network kind of works as it is, but the real issues are really in designing the IP network, being able to sort out the IP addressing, integrating with the enterprise's IP network. So it's a completely different skill set. And then from the point of view of Microsoft and AWS, etc., the idea that you physically got to put radios up and cable them back and stuff, that's not a world that the hyperscalers are used to. They're just used to pressing software, deploying it without having to run out into the field and run cables and put up radios.
I also believe, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like when you look at these bigger brands, like when you think of Nokia and you think of like Microsoft and you think of even Amazon, like the private 5G is just like one small like part of their business. It's a project. It's like a percentage that's very small of what they're doing. Whereas the enterprises themselves, they're heavily like invested into their future with this. And companies that, like Athernet, like you worked with, and ASOCS that I worked with, like are more tailored to that dedication. They're in it for that long run. It's their entire business. They're not going to shut down a project. It doesn't have the same scale and meaning and intensity like it does like for a Nokia. Like to say, it's really bad to lay off like however many staff, but it's just a small percentage of their entire like ecosystem.
These are mission critical applications. They're business critical applications. People invest in it for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. Your entire production line comes to a halt if the network isn't there. If you've invested in using wireless communications in the network, there's a big upgrade cycle going on from the traditional push to talk. You see, the police and security people in airports and industrial sites, oil refineries, etc., all moving away from the traditional push to talk towards some sort of broadband enabled mechanism. These things are the heart and soul of the enterprise. People's physical safety, lives depend on it. But people don't make these investments lightly, right? And it's got to be part of your DNA, not something that you kind of do just because, hey, you know what, today my main market, which is the operators, isn't biting, so I'll go and dip in this for a little while and see. Enterprises probably also feel more comfortable dealing with their traditional system integrators and OT players who've been dealing with this in this business and understand the specific problems that they have, rather than just needing a radio. Just because you have the radio doesn't give you a right to ownership of the network. It's just one component, but it's really the DNA of the IP and solving the customer problem in the OT arena that gives you a right to play and a right to own in this market.
Yeah, obviously there's like a big market like to be had, like as far as enterprise, whether it's industrial 5G, or we're talking
Yeah,
about like mining,
yeah,
manufacturing,
yeah,
all that kind of stuff
yeah.
is like is now like more focused on the smaller enterprise, like the more dedicated, like more dedicated
Yeah, I
companies.
like to call them square mile networks, right? So you've got Wi-Fi for square feet networks. So when you measure networks in square feet, Wi-Fi is great for that. When you measure networks on a national scale, the traditional cellular operator type of product that the big vendors have is great for that, and also the operator is great for that. But when you measure networks in square miles, so a couple of square miles, like to an airport, which could be 30 square miles, or and there's some wind farms we've done which are hundreds of square miles as well. Then Wi-Fi doesn't suit that. You need to be able to, if you look at a square mile network or square miles of networks, you tend to find that you need to have coverage. So you need stronger radios, which is what the private spectrum and 5G brings. You tend to need to support vehicular grade mobility, because by definition something that size is going to have moving things around, and now you're going to start seeing more and more autonomous rigs on networks of that size. So you need pretty reliable, deterministic comms with those. So mobility is something that cellular supports, which Wi-Fi doesn't, right? So you'll see the 5G is ideally suited for that. You will also begin to see this whole upgrade from push to talk, because the minute you move into square mile networks, you'll see that people are walking around with push to talk. There's a big push to talk upgrade cycle going on. They want to move towards cellular, which supports that. You'll find video surveillance becomes pervasive in these large sites, because you can't have people everywhere. You need to have backhaul for those. Cellular, again, trying to roll out fiber or trying to roll out Wi-Fi to be able to connect 30 square miles worth of video surveillance, is not economic. 5G can do that quite well.
So listen, I
Yeah.
mean, I found you on LinkedIn. Let's talk about your event. Like, how can people get involved in the event? It's on the 10th of December, if I'm
Yeah,
right.
so if you go onto my LinkedIn profile and posts, you'll see it there. Otherwise, just look up Uptime Noxit on Eventbrite, and you go then you register, and the link to the conference is there. We're filling out fast. It's free. We've got 300 free access passes. We're close to the 270. I think it's 270. Sorry, we've got 275 free access passes. We're in the 260 when I looked in this morning. So there's only about 15 left. So hurry if you're keen to find out what's happening, what the real state of 5G is today. We're going to cut through all the BS, and it's not billions and billions. You hear a lot of hype around 5G. We'll tell you as it is. It's a wonderful market solving great problems, but it's a market that's perfectly suited to smaller, fast growing scale ups rather than huge behemoths. Who are looking to spend billions and billions. Or looking for billions and billions in revenue. So it's a fantastic business for the likes, well, for all of us players who are in the market today, and a market that's growing pretty strongly. So please come to the webinar, and you'll hear it as it is.
I'll definitely drop a link into the blog and the posts on it.
Yeah.
Wish you the best of luck, and
Yeah.
Nanda,
Thank you, Nick.
it's been a privilege and a pleasure, and I really thank you for your time.
No, well, thank you so much for reaching out to me, and look forward to speaking again soon. And to anyone who's coming to the webinar, see you there.
So here's the marketing lesson that I want everyone to hear. The pullouts of Nokia, Microsoft, AWS, Google, they're not threats. They're actually opportunities. They're opportunities for your company to shine. Because when it comes to B2B, it's not the size that matters, it's the commitment that counts. And this is something that you can offer. We all know that specialized companies, your business is your client's business. And this is the message you need to start shouting out. And the big brands, well, they've just opened the door for you. I'd like to give a big thanks out to ASOCS and to Nanda for letting me speak to them freely and giving me a lot of information. And just remember, 2026, this is the year of the suppliers. This is the year of the specialized suppliers.